Thank you for being here today on our first Diversity Day in the Franklin County Municipal Court Clerk's Office. We have a lot of visitors and friends we'd like to welcome, but I'd like to start with thanking Napoleon Bell and introducing him. He is our moderator for today. He will also introduce our panelist of speakers. Napoleon?
Well, good morning. How is everyone today? You know, I'm really looking forward to hearing this discussion from our esteemed panelists on this special occasion, because I think Clerk Tyack is doing, the right things here in the city and in the county with doing programming as this, because as you know, the city of Columbus, we have such an incredible diverse population, not only culturally, but socioeconomically, and all different perspectives here in the city of Columbus and in the county. So we appreciate you coming to learn a little bit more about persons here in the city, so that we make sure that you understand where their perspectives and where they're coming from, so that you'll better understand the people who come into this building and around your homes, and to make it a place that we understand each other and to be able to go forward. So I'm just going to allow, and I think it'd be the best way to first of all start off this program is to go from my immediate left here and have them introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into the further discussion. So, and as I told before, we'll have the opportunity for you to come up to ask questions of our panelists toward the end of the program, but if you come up here, that would be great. So I'd like to first start off with Mr. Kwame Christian.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for having me here today. My name is Kwame Christian. I'm a legal analyst at the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity at Ohio State. And as a legal analyst, I go around the country giving presentations predominantly on infant mortality and race and policy throughout the country. But I must say this morning is going to be a very special presentation for me, because it's one of the last presentations I do as an OSU employee, because now I'm transitioning into having my own law firm here in Columbus, where I'm going to do estate planning and working with small businesses. So hopefully I can continue to get invites like this from Yolanda and around the city to still do diversity, but I'm going to be transitioning. But I think, especially now in February, but always throughout the year, it's important for us to have a focus on diversity and learn more about each other and take that opportunity to better ourselves. So very excited about the opportunity to speak with all of you today.
Thank you so much. And next to him is Ms. Kathy Chen.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Chen. I'm the Executive Director of Asian American Community Services. My organization was funded in 1976, so we're going to be celebrating our 40th years this year. So with that big milestone, trying to, and look back and say, what have we done in the last 40 years here in Central Ohio? I still remember moving to U.S. 30-some years ago, and I still share that horrible story. I have very limited English at that time. And I remember the first layover was in Dallas, Texas. And my mother and I trying to get hamburger. Well, actually cheeseburger. And, so we were at this place and then wanting, the guy started telling me, what kind of cheese you want. And I could not catch anything he said. The only thing that I caught was blue cheese. So I figure, I know you all had that face now, right? And I was like, I told my mom, I say, I got this one down. It's blue cheese, the color blue of cheese. It will look great, we will have that. And then, so that's what we did. We have that. Oh my goodness. So we got it, and we had that, fragrant, right? And my mom kept saying, you go back and tell them they gave you bad stuff. Go back. I'm like, Mom, I don't know that much English. I can't. And, and she's like, go back, that's all right. We pay for it. I'm like, Mom, I can't, And with that limited English. And so with that, so we had that first cheeseburger with blue cheese on top, and till today, we will not try blue cheese. So with that in mind, saying, okay, how can we get help? How can we get, how could I seek out for help? So with, with that burn experience, I think that's probably where it got me to say, okay, I'm going to managing the language, but not only that, I really want to navigate through to trying to open up, saying, with the barrier, how can we seek out for help? So AACS has started out with providing interpreting services. So to kind of, navigate through that. But of course, there are many more programs. So hopefully we get to share that later on throughout the day.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chen. Next to her, we have Liam Gallagher. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liam Gallagher. I work for Stonewall Columbus. If you haven't heard of us, we're a really small community center. We do LGBT community as like kind of a resource center here in Central Ohio. We're located right in the short north, so just on High Street. You can find us past the Goody Boy Diner if you know where that is. It's about 4th and High. Stonewall, we do a lot of different variety of services. Mostly it is a community center, so we have a lot of different community groups that access our space for free as just a place that they can kind of find community and friends. We do a lot of advocacy for individuals. We get dishonorable discharges overturned for LGBT community members who were dishonorably discharged because they were LGBT. That's been one of the best things. We have a program for people who are currently incarcerated and helping them get support as they are re-entered into the free world if they are able to. As well as a whole lot of other things. We have a hiking club, so people can just go once a month out and hang out together. Lots of board game clubs and movie clubs and things like that. Specifically, I graduated from Ohio State University in 2013, so just a couple years ago, with my undergrad in anthropology and natural resource management. So nothing to do with what I do here. But I've been an activist in the LGBT community since I was about 12 years old when I first came out. I came out for the first time in 7th grade to my parents as being a lesbian, and then I came out the second time when I was around 20 years old as being transgender. So I was initially assigned female at birth, and at this point I've been transitioning socially and physically through hormones in order to have my outside match my inside. So that's a little bit about myself. I have lots of different experiences in the LGBT community. I started the first gender nonconforming and transgender identified student group at Ohio State. In one semester, the first day, it was kind of like, I have a lot of trans friends. That's interesting. Like 5 of my friends are trans. So we should start up a club where we can all just kind of talk about the issues that we have. By the end of the semester, we had over 30 people who were regularly coming. And since I left about 3 years ago, that number has almost doubled. They have about 60 to 70 people who regularly go to meetings. So clearly there was a need in the community to have that space. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about. And I'm really happy to be here and am open to answering any questions as well. I'll just kind of lay that out. If there's something that I'm not comfortable answering, I'll let you know why. I'm not just going to say, never ask someone this question. So don't hesitate. This is a place to definitely ask those questions.
Thank you so much, Liam. And next to him, we have Mr. Abdi Sofe.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abdi Sofe. I work for the Community Relations Commission, which is part of the Mayor's Office, program called the New American Initiative. The New American Initiative Outreach Coordinator for the City of Columbus. And it's actually, want to mention that for the occasion, I recognize most of the faces here because I used to work for the Clerk of Courts under Lori Kayak a few years ago. I actually worked at the Civil Division, and before that I worked just next door, Common Police Court, so I'm familiar most of the work you do. In my current role with the City of Columbus is community engagement. I do a lot of, in Columbus, as you probably know, some of the speakers have mentioned, Columbus has become a global city where we have about 132 different languages spoken in the public schools. We have most of the people you mention, any nation or country or nationality, the chances are they're here in Columbus. So that growth within the city of Columbus prompted then the mayor of the city of Columbus, Mayor Michael B. Coleman, to create the initiative, the New American Initiative. And I joined the office back in 2011. And since then, the initiative has become an international model. Matter of fact, for the past 2.5 years alone, I have traveled and visited 12 European countries where we have done the Columbus way, how we do community engagement, how we deal with different community organizations, different ethnic groups, how Columbus is a welcoming city. And then the city has become a champion where we are part of now a global movement where nations, even in Europe and cities, are embracing the concept that started here in Columbus, which is basically treating everyone, regardless of their ethnicity, their background, with respect, with dignity and respect. Some of my work is making presentations like this, diversity training, cultural competency trainings. We have a partnership with not only public organizations and the county and the state and federal partners, but also private sector. Because the direction where the world is going nowadays is with the globalization and the movement, the traffic back and forth in terms of students, international students, in terms of economic developments, is the idea of basically understanding your neighbors, understanding your customers, understanding their values, their culture, their needs, so you can be accessible, and also the vice versa. And that's pretty much what I do. And I also want to acknowledge that actually our moderator was the community relations, director of the community relations, just stepped down last month. So it's absolutely a great honor to be here among friends and colleagues. And I will encourage you to ask any questions regarding my work, my previous work, and also my experience with the legal community when I worked here. I may have some suggestions and inputs, and this I would like to see a conversational panel discussion where I would really encourage you to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi. And next to him is Ms. Julia Arbini-Carbonell. Welcome.
Good to see you. Good morning. My name is Julia, like Director Bell. You'll always be my director. I'm with the Ohio Hispanic Coalition. Arbini-Carbonell is my last name. And I'm here to kind of share some of our experiences. And one of the, ways that we started the Ohio Hispanic Coalition, which I'm one of the founders and the only founder actually working at the coalition. We had 3 women, decided in early 1990s that, or even before that there was a sense of terrible disparity in the way services were being provided to individuals from Latin America at that time. So we started the coalition in 1990 as a nonprofit organization, and we have a 501c3 status by the federal government. Since then, we have been expanding. At the time, we focused ourselves on conducting cultural competency, and I have trained so many individuals across my lifetime. I have over 25 to 30 years training cultural competency and other civil rights issues. But we train police officers, court personnel, judges, everybody for about 5 years. After that, and mental health providers and medical professionals as well. In 2000, close to 1996, we experienced an influx of Latinos coming from different countries to Central Ohio. And that's where we started to realize, okay, we have to be more than just an advocacy agency. The trigger was that we had workers coming from Mexico and other Latin American countries, although Mexicans are North Americans. But anyway, I just lump them with us anyway. And we were experiencing a lot of issues like mothers giving birth at home and not having any medical services and almost dying at home. So that was the trigger that promoted us to become a social service agency that provides services to the Latino community. In 2000, I'd like to concur with Ms. Chen. In 2001, we were one of the agencies, along with Asian American Community Services, that come together with other immigrant service community agencies to ensure that Central Ohio has standards for interpretation that interpreters were trained and qualified to serve not only in the medical profession but in the other fields, helping fields. So we were a strong instrument along with AACS and other agencies. In 1999, we established one of our programs that we still run. It's the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Program. That is very important to us because, we know for experience that even English-speaking women have a really difficult time in coming forward. And it takes about a woman to 7 times to really walk out and have a safety plan to go and have her own life. For immigrant communities where English is not available, they're not English proficient, is even worse. So we have focused our energies on having a very successful domestic violence sexual assault program. And we work very closely with some of the parts of the courts here in Central Ohio. We also have a very successful after-school program, and after-school program for us is more than just tutoring, but also ensuring that our culture and values are kept within our families. We don't believe that if we dismiss where we come from and who we are, that we are a whole as people. So one of the features that we have is that we stress upon them to continue to value their culture. So we have events to assist them with that, like celebrating three wise men, which is Dia de los Reyes Magos. And we also encourage them to become bilingual. So our children, when they leave our after-school program, they're essentially bilingual. They learn English in school, and they continue to, use their Spanish in their home and anywhere else that they can use it. We have also instituted programs such as, enrolling women in SNAP, because one of the issues is language also. So we have a program that helps them. We have also Quick for Two, because we want our children to be born, healthy. If mom is smoking, we need to help her. So we're working on that as well. One of our exciting new projects is that because our Latino community is so diverse and so spread out in Central Ohio and further, we wanted to reach them directly. So we have submitted an application to the FCC, and they have given us a permit for a license for a low-frequency FM radio station that we hopefully will be operational by mid this year. And that would be entirely in English, in Spanish for the community, but we will be sending messages also in English for those that would like to, know what's going on. But it's imperative that we touch the community that way. And the we have so many programs. So a little bit about me: I worked for the state of Ohio for 33 years, and I retired in 2013. I worked in the Civil Rights Division, and I had, Title VI under my responsibilities, as well as cultural competency. So we trained the entire 4,000 employees for ODGFS on a regular basis on both issues. I'm from Colombia, like I said, so I encourage you to ask questions, definitely, and we're here to assist you in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. That is very informative. And as you see, we have a very diverse panel of perspectives and backgrounds. And before we get started with those questions, our questioning the panelists, I also want to recognize, some of the people that are around here that are also a part of this program, and you'll get to ask questions of them, and also actually do some taste testing there in the back also. From Urban Chefs, we have Anthony Frazier. I'd like to appreciate you for being here. It's a great thing that business here that is making a difference. And then also Judge Grady Pettigrew of the National Center for Urban Solutions. I'd like to thank you for being here. And I'm sorry, and you just walked in, that's why I'm with the Ohio Hispanic Coalition.
It's
Great.
Paloma.
Great.
Her name is Paloma.
Okay, great. So we have that information, then also information from Stonewall Columbus and Asian American Community Services. So we have a lot of information that you can pick up, take with you, and further that information into the community. So with this conversation of diversity and the different perspectives that you all are coming from, we often talk about perceptions versus realities. And I think that's what we're here to have a conversation on, is what people feel as though that is from the respective groups or communities that you're here to talk about. What's the realities? And so if you could, and I guess we could go from here to the right, is from your perspective or from where you're coming from, what kind of issues or do you see that you're always being questioned about, and what's the reality that you really see out there in regards to your area of expertise?
Okay, that's a great question. And I think one of the questions that I'll say the type of question I get. The type of question I get is, what do black people think about blah? And I am ill-equipped to answer that question because I can't speak on behalf of all black people. And so I think there's an assumption that we have whenever we're talking to a minority group that they all think the same way. And that is not at all the case. And another thing too, I think there's a lot of assumptions going on that we can look at somebody and identify which group they belong to. And hearing Liam's story just really solidified that for me, because I was going to come in and I was thinking I was really smart. I was like, I'm going to talk about assumptions. And then boom, I'm guilty of the same thing after hearing your story. And I know for me, it's especially applicable because on the sheet, on the flyer, it says Kwame Christian, African American. But the funny thing is I don't identify as African American, I identify as Caribbean American. And so I'm first generation Caribbean American. My family came to this country for education, and like a lot of foreigners, we got stuck. So we're still here. So I grew up in Tiffin, Ohio. Does anybody know where Tiffin, Ohio is? All right, yes. And so I always say there were 4 black people in Tiffin, Ohio. Me, my mom, my brother. So it was an interesting experience. So for me growing up with us, because my parents taught me how to speak, I had a really strong West Indian accent. And I didn't have an experience with an African American until I got to college. And so now, since I've been code switching, does anybody know the term code switching, what that means? No, okay. So for instance, when I studied abroad in Ecuador, I spoke Spanish because that's the language we speak. Here, culturally, we speak American English. So I have to put my Caribbean accent aside and speak with an American accent. And we all do that to a certain extent, where it's like, when I'm at home, I speak one way, but when I'm at work, I speak another way. So we code switch. And so the thing is for me, after 4 years of code switching and now marrying an African American, my accent is dead. And so I often just get lumped in with African American. And so when people come to me and say, what do African Americans think about a certain issue? I realize it just this whole realization that people look at us all the same way. And that's not the case. So I think what we need to do, a big step towards really embracing diversity, is embracing our spirit of curiosity and not coming in with an assumption that we know somebody's background just because we know a little bit about them, but really opening ourselves up to learn. And then the impetus is on us to then, once somebody approaches us with that vulnerability that comes with curiosity, to take the opportunity to teach and learn. And so then both of us improve our situation and the community's situation through that interaction.
Thank you so much.
Well, most of people think Asian American. I think you probably will have that idea saying we're the model minority, we're the silent minority. And the silent minority does not fit for me at all. And I remember, and I also stay in a small town. My family, I joke about my dad meant to go to Newark, New Jersey, but the first Newark he saw was Newark, Ohio, and so he picked that one instead. So growing up in Newark, Ohio, imagine that, but we have 2 Chinese family, and both of the family, the last name happened to all be Chen, but it was easy to identify because my family, all girl, and their side was all boy. So, so it's easy to know. So you don't dare to do anything wrong because they can easily pick out, say, oh, so the boys, okay, that's that Chen family. And the girls, all right, that Chen family. So, but I remember growing up at that, it was really predominantly white, and going to store, people would stare at me and just stare at me. And I, remember even in high school, and I'll just say, why don't you take a picture? It will last longer. It was such a nasty attitude of mine, instead of saying, okay, let me share, I have that, anger, because I felt like, okay, they're stereotyping me or anything, but instead of saying, okay, they might be curious, they might want to know who I am, what can I bring to the table? But again, a lot of times when people look at Asian, I always say it's not one size fits all. Like for instance, I identify myself Chinese, but my family came from Taiwan. But then there are also mainland China, and then also folks from Hong Kong. So just saying that Chinese, often when people call to my office, say we think we need Chinese interpreter. Right there we can say, all right. Just to let you know, there were probably at least 30 different dialogues in there. So which one do you want or do you need? Really, that many? Yes, And then when you start looking and saying, okay, let's take a look at Korea. You have North Korea, South Korea. When you look at Japan, you have 4 different islands compiled together. Now you look at, let's just use Malaysia as another interesting country. You have Malaysia, you have Singapore. And then you have the dynamic going on that, Singapore people do not like to be called, part of the Malay because they identify themselves as, Singapore, that's an individual country. And then you go into Indonesia. And so you look at the entire AAPI, the Asian American Pacific Islander, then all of a sudden you have probably, and I think Abdi was right, probably there's more than hundreds language or dialects going on. And so how can we say that there, one size fits all? We might all have dark hair. So share with what you said, really, often when people say, well, what Asian people look like or what you guys culture look like, it's like, wow, it would take many months for us to share. And but then often people thought about saying like Asian students. They think, oh, they're the smart kids. I remember going to school and walking to classroom and people like, you're here. Or I'm dropping out the class. It's like, what did I do? And they're like, well, because of you, we're not going to curve the the grade. I'm like, that's not fair to say. But did you know the Cambodian community here in Central Ohio, they have the highest dropout rate. Their high school dropout rate is 60%. And the national rate, it's only, in the teens. So can we say, again, one size fits all? No. And why make them to be the highest dropout rate? It's the social economic issues, or could that be the family value issues? Or could it be any other struggles? And keep in mind, they were probably the earliest immigrants or refugees got brought into Central Ohio. They came in the early 80s or late 80s and early 90s. And their struggle, even till today, earlier, talked about saying the language. You often want. We also have a youth program, and we work with kids who are identified at risk, especially in the Cambodian community, because they lack of the identity, saying I'm not part of Cambodian because that's where my grandparents came from, where my parents came from. I'm part American. I want to be American, but I don't look like American. So when they're trying to search the identity, the easiest way for them to go is going to join gang where they can get the open arms saying do this But how can we try to get them to say, okay, what is the value of your family, of your culture, and be proud of your culture, be proud of the language that you can speak, be proud of your own identity. And that takes a lot of us to work with them. And I often, think when growing up, I don't understand the fact that the sentence saying it takes a community to raise a child. And today in my position, I realize, yes, that is so true. Because what the community can foster is the positive attitude, the welcome attitude. And I think, for instance, today, the event that you guys are putting up, that's exactly what we're sending out. It's welcoming community. The fact that you took time out of your busy schedule. I'm sure you got tons of paperwork that you need to do, you need to file, you need to call. But you're willing to take the time to understand, say, what the AAPI stands for, what the LGBTQ community needs, what the African American male or female are facing, and the Latino, and what else issues going on. Recently, there's another thing that, earlier we talked about, domestic violence. It takes, women 7, times for them to leave their abuser. But I think it makes even harder for a AAPI population or Latino population, because you're at a place, the only person that you can identify is this intimate loved one, yes, has abused you all your life, but where can I go? Where can I find a place that will welcome me and have a look-alike? So, okay, it is okay for me to stay. Last year, AACS has helped law enforcement and rescue 18 victims from the human trafficking. And one issue that we dealt with, again, is the identity. All those women call those traffickers, they call them big sister and big brother. And it's really an easy terminology saying big brother, big sister. But the dynamic of that terminology actually have more meaning than that. It's again, going back, is the family dynamic. Saying, if you call someone big sister and or big brother, saying, okay, I respect you, and you have a hierarchy in the whole system there. So I will not do anything to betray the royalty. So even today, that you abuse me, you sold me many different times. But the fact, the hierarchy, the value, the family value is there, instilled in them. It took us 8 months to work with them to help them to identify, saying, you are a victim, you have been violated. And that, that the false security or the false value that been given to you is no longer exists, and let us help you. So I do want to say, thank you to the court system, because you guys done a great job helping, all the victims and provide all the system, and even identify all the different language, interpreter, and get the whole legal system together. But yeah, there are many different things that we share, and it's going back to the saying, the perception and reality. And I think throughout the days, and I'm sure more times that we will work together, that we'll be able to share more of this information. Sorry, it took a little long time.
You're fine. Thank you so much, Mr. Gallagher.
I don't think I could have said it better than Kwame, especially talking about assumptions, so I won't kind of linger on that. I will say, kind of in addition to the assumptions, is kind of the idea that a person of this community has to educate you in this moment on their identity. Sometimes, like, for example, I love talking in front of people and, kind of explaining the issues that the LGBT community faces. But sometimes when I go home, I don't really want to talk about it like all the time. And so if people are grilling you about these things or asking you really invasive questions, it can be really frustrating. So just kind of remember that, we're people too, for everything. So you don't want to, if there's a quick Google search that you can make that may answer your question, maybe it's not the best time to ask someone, especially while you're there. I will say one of the most negative perceptions, I think, of the entire LGBT community is that it's really kind of a predatory community, especially when we're talking about the trans community. Right now, we're seeing a lot of bathroom bills popping up where kind of you have to go into a bathroom that your ID says you should be in, which for a lot of people is a pretty big issue, because in order to even begin transitioning, just to give you an idea of the time and financial commitment this is to do, you're required to go through 3 months of therapy before you can even begin any kind of transition. So that's already money that's out of your pocket. Most insurances don't cover that. And then you have to find a physician who's willing to prescribe you hormones, and that is not the easiest task, actually. We have some physicians around here in Columbus that we work with, and most physicians will, but sometimes they will delay your hormones if they don't want you to transition. We've had people have really negative interactions with healthcare providers because of this reason. Really, there's no issues that should kind of make people feel unsafe when they're at a doctor's office. But this perception that trans women are going into the bathrooms to be predatory and to assault other women. And that's really not the case. When trans people go to the bathroom, we're doing the exact same thing that all of you are. I know for me, and for the trans community specifically, there's kind of this idea that, we have all of these cases of trans women who have assaulted people in bathrooms. The reality of it is there are 0 instances of trans women ever assaulting anyone in a bathroom. But the number of assaults that trans women have faced while they've been going to the bathroom or even just walking down the street because people perceive them to be trans is incredibly high. Last year we had 20 trans women, and almost all 20 of them were trans women of color specifically, who were murdered because they were trans. And that is here in the United States. This isn't nationwide. 2 of those individuals were here in Ohio. So this is really something that hits home. The community also has really high rates of suicide as well, especially when we're looking at youth. When we're talking about the trans community in general, about 41% of trans-identified adults have attempted suicide, and that's compared to about 3% of the general population. So that's a huge gap in what we're seeing. When we're talking about LGBT youth, they're almost 50% more likely to become homeless. For a variety of reasons, whether their parents kick them out. I unfortunately can count on both hands the number of my friends who at Ohio State have been disowned by their parents because they are transgender. So they've had no contact with their parents for at least a year because that is the way that their parents prefer it to be. I work with a lot of youth who have similar issues, so really just understanding that we are people first, and that those who are especially marginalized within intersecting identities, whether it's intersecting of race and sexuality, things like that, it really puts you on the margins visibly for other people to commit acts of violence and things like that against you. And in reality, most of us are just trying to live our lives, and we just want to go on. And for me, especially early in my transition, I was terrified every time I went to the bathroom. Even now, I'm terrified every time I go to the bathroom because I think, what if someone knows? What if they realize? And I'm in the bathroom and someone knows that I'm trans, and they don't like that. Here in Ohio, we have no protections for the LGBT community as far as employment and housing. So luckily here in Columbus, in city limits we do, but where I live up in Worthington, if my landlord were to find out that I was transgender, they could evict me for no reason, and that's a legitimate reason. They could say that it's because I'm trans and there's nothing I could do about it. I answer a lot of phone calls weekly of people who have been fired or evicted because they are trans or LGBT in some capacity. And the first question I ask is, are you in Columbus? Because if you're not, there's really not much I can do, unfortunately. So that's just a number of kind of the issues. I think there's a perception that the community really isn't kind of oppressed in a way as far as we've hit marriage equality, so at this point, what else is there to do? But there's still a lot of work that we have, so that's kind of what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Arbini?
Well, thank you. My colleagues actually said pretty much what I would have said. The issue of the challenge when you see the whole world. I am one of those people who believe in the U.S., we are in the best shape in terms of civil rights and civil liberty, acceptance. There are some challenges here and there, but most of the states in Columbus, Ohio in particular, we managed to really work very well together in different communities, understanding, creating a platforms that is friendly city to become a friendly city. I don't know if you may have heard, most of you, we made the list, and the only city that was listed as the smartest city was Columbus. And primarily the reason why Columbus is so accepting and is having a friendly public policy and a leadership that created that was one thing that really helped. But also, we are college town. There are 63 different universities in central Ohio on Columbus Metro. So people come for education. Most of the population is relatively highly educated to compare with many other cities in the state of Ohio. Columbus was the only city that have grown. Matter of fact, every single other city in Ohio have lost people except Columbus. And most of those growth were through immigration. Matter of fact, 82% of that growth was through immigrants. People who are coming. Speaking of the subject of accepting and the stereotypes or public misperceptions, there are some minor incidents where you may see some attitudes, them versus us kind of questions. But in terms of discriminations, in terms of racial or ethnic divide between the communities, where public institutions will restrict access based on any of the protected class, Columbus is very high. And I do travel, as I mentioned earlier. There are some nations in the world that thinks that we made it possible. That is not even possible. And we're talking about some of industrial, highly developed, nations that are very rich, or you cannot expect things that we will accomplish. With that said, the issue of diversity, we came a long way, but with all attitude of assimilation. You see certain attitudes where access to opportunities, jobs, housing, loans, there are a lot of disparities, and it affects different communities, especially minority and immigrant communities. Language access is one of those things. Funding and home ownership or property ownership of any sort is challenging to many communities. But when you work or have a conversation with different ethnic groups, you will see that most of those people are very resourceful. They created their own, for example, the Kirwan Institute actually was the one who, the agency that did the data. The small business startup rates is the new Americans and immigrants tend to have or create more businesses than any other community. So one of the things that we do in the Community Relations Commission is making sure those values are actually encouraged and promoted, where we encourage everyone to understand the more you understand, the more you know the person next or you're doing business with, the more you understand their cultures, their values, their expectations, the more you will be successful doing business with that person. And we think this is the way to go with. The incidents that we see, as I said earlier, is very minor, but for example, why they can't learn the language. Well, how many of you here in the room speak different languages? And it's same happens every time. The reason why people don't speak a lot of different languages is when you reach certain age, it's really difficult to learn a new language. In certain communities, they tend to bond together. The Somali community concentrate in one area, certain ethnic or nationality group bonding together in one area. So that individual, middle-aged or elderly individual, will not have access to exposure of any other people that speak different languages. The concept of assimilation was relevant and very much prevalent back in 1900s, because then the immigrants that came have few things in common. They were all Europeans, right? They were all Christians. They all looked like one another. So it really was easy to assimilate. Melting pot. Now the question will be, is melting pot really applicable in 2016? Did the African American community ever assimilate it? They were here all along. The assimilation was not universal, that's applicable for everyone. So the new concept is integration, whereby you go to university and the chances of your professor looking like Southeast Asian is what? Or West African? Or having a thick, very thick accent, can that person be assimilated? You're not going to be any less American as long as you're here. Our doctors who practice medicine here in Columbus, who tend to have a Sikh wearing turban or Muslim kind of cultural dress, it's very popular. You see that, and that individual is an American. I was in Istanbul airport when I ran into an individual. It was an American. He said, he saw my passport because I was in the counter, U.S. passport, right? So he said, where are you from? I said, Ohio. We're all the way in Europe. And he said, you don't sound like Ohioan. So that actually prompted long conversation with him where I asked him, how would the Ohioan sound like today? Because when was the last time you were in Ohio? He said, no, actually, I don't remember. It was back in 1970s. It was a relatively middle-aged man. But we had a conversation, and he conceded. He said, you know what? I talked about the multiculturalism. I talked about the demographic change. I talked about Columbus and how Columbus is an international city now. People sound different accents, different sound, different colors, different, and it's a good thing. That is multiculturalism. And more the community is multicultural, the more that community will be successful. So when we'll talk more, I don't want to take all your time.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. Good. I can't follow that, but I'll try. When we're talking about Latinos, when I walked in, did you think I was Latina? No. Why not? Okay. And one of the things that I want to share with you is that Latinos we're multiracial. And when I talk about Latinos in general, I call them the cosmic race. Because when Spaniards came to colonize the Americas, they start mixing with the native. And that's how we develop a new, group of people. So I'm kind of fair because Europeans also landed in our lands. They landed here too. So I am from Italian, Spanish background. And what Abdi was talking about, integration. And integration is very different from assimilation. And what we've been promoting since the 60s, or earlier than that, is assimilation. And what I'm hearing is assimilation cannot be accomplished because only the certain people that came before, from English, England, and others could assimilate because they look alike. But sometimes we don't look alike and we don't sound alike. Do you hear my accent? Do I have one? Because I don't hear it. But when I talk to somebody from another place, I hear it. But I don't hear my own. I don't think I have one. I think I'm managing it, I think. But anyway. So when I'm talking about Latinos, we are talking about a group of people that they are so different but so alike. We're 21 different countries. Only one of them do not speak Spanish as their national language, and that's Brazil. They speak Portuguese. But they're our brothers as well. So when we talk about the Americas, and the term that's been used here in Central Ohio, New Americans, it's kind of touchy for me. From the very beginning, I wasn't sensitive to it. Because I was born in South America. That's American continent. People that are born in Central America, they are Americans. And Latinos born in the USA, North American continent as Mexican, those are Americans. So we have an issue with that. We are already Americans. When you talk about serving the 21 different countries, and we have them all here in Columbus, Ohio, I mean, we have gathered people to meet individuals, and we have been able to bring as many as half of our countries to be represented. So you're going to find people from Ecuador, from Guatemala, you're going to find some people from Chile, from Argentina, Colombia, everywhere. We have something in common, is that we speak Spanish. However, there are some people from Central America and South America that also speak their own indigenous language. We have people from Mexico that speak Nahuatl, which is an indigenous language, or they may speak Zapoteco. There is an array of languages. And when I hear, because we have an interpreter services as well, and when we hear the word, we want an interpreter for Hernandez, I always ask them, where are they from, do you know? Because we have had to go into, interpreting for a Brazilian individual in Spanish. They're two different languages. It's like English and French. They're not even alike, okay? So this is one of the things that is very difficult because you are dealing with 21 different countries. It's like Europe. How many countries are in Europe? Each of them are different. Belgium is different from France. France is different from, Germany or Italy. They're all totally different. So we're very different. So one of the things that is very important for service providers, and in essence you are public servants and you're providing services to the public, is knowing your, who your customer is. And how is that possible? By asking. I think people are more than willing to, tell you who they are and what their needs are. I think I concur with Leon in terms of assumptions. Assumptions is the worst thing that anybody can do, because if you assume, you're getting it totally wrong. With me, you would have gotten it wrong, right? So one of the things that we need to really understand is that there is diversity among us, and there are differences among us, but we have a commonality. A lot of us are from the same religion, although new religions are going into Latin America, but most of our countries have base of, Catholic religion. So a lot of our people here come from that background, religious background. Like I said, we don't speak dialects, so sometimes they call interpretations for us. Can you send me a Mexican Spanish interpreter? What is that? Mexico speaks Spanish. But what we have in different countries is a different regional differences, like we do here in the United States. The people in Maine may call something different from the people in Texas, or the people in Florida, or in Massachusetts, or New Jersey. So we have to learn colloquialism to understand what they're asking, and that's what we always suggest individuals to go that far to ask. One of the things that people assume here is that if you walk in and you're Latino, you're Mexican, and there's nothing wrong with being Mexican. I've been called Mexican, I've been called Cuban, Puerto Rican, and I'd be honored to represent any of those groups. But the fact is that we need to really, respect your customer, and if you're not sure, just ask, and not say, because, some people might feel offended. I don't feel offended by being called Mexican or Peruvian or whatever. That's just as legitimate if you don't know. So one of the things that we have is the Ohio Hispanic Coalition serves a very special population. Our population, for the most part, falls under the poverty rate from the federal level. So we're dealing with individuals that have many needs, are limited English proficient or no English at all. So one of the things that I want to really stress upon you is that access to services is one of the greatest obstacles facing immigrants, And I'm talking about immigrants. We are immigrants. I don't think that we have any refugees anymore except from Cuba. So everybody that comes in the United States from Latin America is 99.9% an immigrant, not a refugee, which they're also immigrant, but different status. So one of the things that we have to learn is that absence to being able to communicate in their language is a serious problem in the delivery of their services. I just had someone yesterday in my office who thought he understood, spoke very limited English. The business owner indicated that he spoke Spanish. They tried to communicate each other. They didn't. However, our client was so trustful that he believed what he thought he was hearing. This is a purchase of a car. He gave this business owner his car for $4,000. He gave him $7,000 cash for the new car that he was going to get, and the owner said, if you give me those two things, you can take the car. That's what he understood. When he presents the papers to me, no, the car cost $13,000, so he still owes $6,900 and something. So he thought that he didn't owe any money. So one of the things that is occurring in our community is the exploitation, is the what I call predatory practices that are happening. So when they come here in the court for whatever reason it is, I hope that they understand they are served by someone that has empathy, that someone that understands their humanity as well, and the difficulties and the difficult journey that they walk. Because it's very hard to come into a system, and I work for a system, I work for the state. I know how difficult that system is. But we have to make our conscious effort as public servants to try to assist that individual that is limited English proficient and that is protected by law to receive their services in the language that they're speaking. I know how many of you are bilingual? I didn't see any hands up. Few, okay, bilingual, that's good. But the other thing that I want to talk about, and maybe I'm a little bit out of what is supposed to be, but hey, you have me here, I'm going to take the chance. I think that the court, we work with different areas of the court, and we're very successful in certain aspects. With domestic violence victims, we have a very good rapport with that area. But we don't have as good rapport with other areas because I feel your frustrations because you don't speak Spanish. Somebody walks in and you don't have an interpreter, you don't have a bilingual staff, and you don't know what to do with that person. Or somebody calls you, and believe me, I do shop calls, and that's what I did at the state. I would call and pretend not to speak English, and you know how many times I was hung up because they didn't want to help me. I hope that the system that we work here puts strategies in place to give you the tools to be able to assist my community that is monolingual Spanish. I don't want to hear again, and I heard it yesterday, this is America, learn English. I haven't met an immigrant in all my life that doesn't know that in order to succeed in this country, they need to speak English. But English is not an easy language to learn. And this is true story, because I base all my trainings on true story. This is an employer that made a requirement. He bought the company. He had a lot of Latinos working, and he made this decision. If you don't speak English in 3 months, you're fired. How many of you can speak Spanish in 3 months? He fired them.
And Commissioner, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to get one more question, and then I want to have the audience have an opportunity to have a conversation. But also that leads into my last question. How can, because we've talked and went over some of these issues and barriers and perceptions versus reality. Well, how can the clerk of courts, how can agencies who are here, how can we assist and or better connect or better understand what are the areas that from our panelists here see that the agencies or departments or our viewing audience can help to better understand to prevent some of these issues from happening and or to be that advocate for the various communities. So once again, we'll start.
Sure, and I'll keep it quick so we can get to the audience participation point. But I guess I just have to reiterate, be curious and have events like this. And a lot of times people think that these are really surface level types of events, but I really think that this one went deep into the issues. And for people who really understand this, it might seem like it's an unnecessary exercise, but you would be surprised as to how many people this is just groundbreaking to. And even for me, I've been doing social justice, racial social justice for 2 or 3 years now, and I'm blown away by some of the stories that I've heard and what I've learned today too. So we need to keep having these kinds of conversations, and we need to keep having presentations, and the food is a good start. Food is always good. That's the easiest way to start introducing people to culture, but then following it up with deep conversations, that's really important. And then not just stopping with conversation, because we are really good at talking in 2016, and it's election season, so we know people can talk. But now it's time to follow up the talking with action, and really taking those necessary steps to make people feel comfortable and make this court work more efficiently.
Thank you.
Well, language access is so important, and you know, and I'm sure Julio can vouch what I'm about to say. Well, over the years, yes, the system is providing the access to the language, but could be because of financial stress or constraints or whatnot, we're seeing some changing, saying, okay, instead of provide interperson, so we actually have an in-person interpreter available. They're trying to use, like, for instance, like telephone services, or use the video. And not to say, I love modern language, but some of us are just not that good to try to navigate through. I mean, I still have trouble using my iPhone. I mean, smartphone, I guess I'm not smart enough to use smartphone. But there are also a lot of time, the body language is also part of the language. So, for instance, and I was working with a group of law enforcement, and when you're working with domestically violence victim, they're already terrified. And then yes, you hand them a telephone, say, okay, talk to the interpreter. But it's not what it's talking out. It's her body language. It's her eye. She would not have the eye contact with you because there's something that she's afraid to say. So she doesn't want to say that out because somebody is observing what she's about to say. So it's her body language, it's her eye contact is sending you the message. Can you see that through the phone? Can you see that through the video? Can you see all those fears? No, you can't. And you probably think, oh, because we provide services, so I'm vouching for them. No, that's part of that important language, because when we're first learning and trying to get the command, a lot of time it's by having the gesture, by having the body language, by having the eyesight with you. That's where we're establishing the first trust. We feel like I can look at you and get that trust, and now I'm ready to tell you what I'm about to tell you. So I really like to, I know your court done a great job, because we've been getting all sorts of requests, and then you will go out your way to provide that for us. But again, I really would like to vouch to not only just for the court system, even school. Often we see students, we have seen students that they need a properly evaluation, but the fact of budgeting issues or whatnot, often the students being handed over a phone, say, call your mom. Well, not calling my mom will help me, because what I need is someone that can speak my language, to talking to my parents, that let them understand what the struggle that I have, and that takes more than just that phone interpreting or video interpreting.
So what I would say is, especially I think kind of talking about misconceptions and things, that I understand that there are people who have maybe moral or religious reasons why they're never going to agree with our community. I understand that. I'm not asking you to set aside your value system, your moral, religious system in any way. All we're asking is really that you are respectful of the people who are in front of you, and make them feel like they are safe when they're there. Kind of treating people with respect and dignity first is really key, especially in this capacity, because if you're going through the court system, you're already at a pretty vulnerable state, no matter why you're going there. And so what I would just say is, you can, for that moment, we're all going to run into people we don't like in some capacity, but when you step in this building, you kind of are taking that commitment to putting those things aside to make sure that you're giving the best care to the person who's in front of you at all times. As a way of caring for those people, especially when we're talking about the trans community in particular, it can get a little confusing if people are in the process of name change or gender marker change. Oftentimes our documents aren't going to be matching up, whether or not we have the financial capability of affording a name change or the gender marker change. So what I would say is if you have someone who comes in front of you and maybe the name and the gender that's on their documents doesn't quite look like the person who's in front of you, take that moment to really ask, is this the name that you would prefer that I use for you, or do you have another name that you would rather I use? Or maybe, for example, you have a paper that says this person is male and his name is Kevin, but you see someone who is very clearly female presenting in front of you. She has makeup on, maybe. You can ask, I see that the name and gender here are this, but I just wanted to make sure, is that correct, or do you have pronouns that you would rather I use while you are here? And just to kind of meet that person where they are, just be open again to having that communication, learning a little bit about someone before making those assumptions, and just treating everyone respectfully.
Thank you so much. Abdi?
I worked with most of this team, some of them, under Laura Tyack, and I know they do a great job. Few things that in dealing with a city that is continuously growing, with people coming, newcomers, piggybacking through family reunification, through refugee resettlement, through international students, you're dealing with people who have different expectations, different way of doing things. And some of my colleagues have said, including the language access. I know at the clerk's office, when someone comes, they might not understand the authority, the process, your role. One of the things that I used to hear a lot is, hey, I can't give you legal advice. I can't give you legal because of some restrictions with the bar associations and some expectations. The clerk of court deals with paperwork, and I understand that you might not able to do certain things because of those limitations. But some of the people that don't understand, I think the office can be creative in terms of providing resources, in terms of always opportunities can be created. If there is a will, there will be a way. One of the things that I used to wonder was with clients and people coming to the court, and then there will be a language interpreter because they will require, because of the language barrier, and the court will be continued to another date, right? There will be a traffic case. The individual asks for language interpreter. Then, for some reason, it's very common that the court be delayed or rescheduled. They call it continued to another date. And then there will be a letter sent to the individual. That letter is not their own native language, it's in English. What if we can be creative, because we knew it already, that individual was in the court, if we can, whatever language they ask, if we can translate that letter, the notice, the summon, whatever, the reminder, and send it to individual, because we already know that individual actually was in the courtroom and he needed a language interpreter. Those are one of the things that comes to mind. The other thing, as far as customer service 101, you have all kinds of people walking in with, as I said many times, cultures, different cultures, expectations. People are visual. I'm glad you talked about the eye contact issue. How many of you have heard, he was lying? You know how I know it? He couldn't even look me in the eye. Have you heard that? Have you ever heard that before? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out not so much, a lot of different cultures practice that. Matter of fact, it's offensive for some cultures to look the person in the eye. You can't do that. I know for the Somali community, you only look the person in the eye when you want to pick a fight with them. You're looking at me? Kind of thing, right? When you're mad. Otherwise, you be polite and look down, right? A lot of Asians will say yes. What does yes mean? Yes is yes, right? He said yes. She said yes. It turns out not so fast. Yes is acknowledgement. I hear you. It's not, what are you going to do this? I want you to do this. Okay, yes. You understand? Yes. Well, she said, or he said, she understand, right? Not so fast. She has no clue. Yes is acknowledgement for some Asian cultures. So how do you navigate that? And let me conclude this. I want to show you an image. I want somebody to interpret that image. Can you see it? Can everybody see it? It says a man is a desert. He's running. He's drinking. I don't know what that is. But anyone? Any volunteers? Well, let's say he was running. He drank a Coke. Whatever that Coke caused him to pass out, right? He was maybe poisoned. So the reason why I'm showing this is based on your background and culture, people interpret differently. How do people read? We read English. English is from left to right, right? And some other cultures, their script is from right to left. If you write in Arabic, you write it from right to this way. If you write in English or Spanish or Latin, you write it this way. So based on your culture, you're reading the message from one side or the other side. And the conclusion is what? It's completely different. Same thing applies when it comes to expectation, when it comes to understandings. And people stereotype a lot. They do that. They don't that. The Africans do that. The Asians do that. The reality is every single culture is so diverse. There are some what we call personalities. You have 3, 4 kids, are they same? People have different personalities. They have different expectations. They have different age groups. They have different experiences. So you cannot bull them. If anyone will tell you, I'm expert of this, whatever culture is, I'm an expert on Somali culture. Do they know what they're talking about? Nobody can become an expert on any culture because cultures are so diverse as the individuals have different personalities and different expectations. So someone walks in, oh yeah, he is the Nigerian. And what do the Nigerian do? They do this, they practice this, they have this religion. Do one nationality have one single religion? There is no such thing. People have different religions, different faiths, different beliefs, so you cannot bull them together. But what you can do is you can, based on the common experience of the individual, is unique. So that uniqueness is what you look for. And speaking of that experience, I have also heard, speaking of this legal, while I'm in the subject, in many Latino countries, how many of you have...
Hey, Abdi, I hate to cut you off because we're going to be running out of time. But let me, and we'll come back to that. But I want to make, are there persons in the audience who want to ask a couple questions?
This will take 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay.
Notary Public. How many of you are Notary Public? You know, it turns out in some of the Latino countries, to be a Notary Public is really a big deal. So you have certain authority. So people will come here, and there are some challenges where they seek Notary Public, and they think you have somehow some kind of a lawyer. And they file the paperwork through Notary Public, and as a result, a lot of people are, being victimized by that. So that I want to throw that also out.
That's a good point. Good point. Thank you.
And that's true. I'm a notary public.
You are?
Yes, but I'm not an attorney. And in our country, attorneys are, by the nature of their profession, notary publics. So that's the difference. That's why they say they go to them. I think that I concur and support everything that has been said over here. I would like to really ask upon you, all of you, because you're here because you are interested, because you have a motivation within yourself to learn more about these people that come to you for help in assistance or services. So I think that you're the perfect group to let you know. When I came to the Department of Human Services at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I learned quickly by doing some research was that, there is a law that was passed in 1964 and nobody's following it. So I decided to look in the law, and that's the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So this is the one that I want you guys to explore. And don't think that because maybe you're not the chief up there, but I wasn't the chief either. But I was able to educate my supervisors and their supervisors and their supervisors about the liability that we could incur if the department didn't provide access to services in the language of the client, because it's mandated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that's how everything started. We started with minimum things of translating bilingual forms. Then we moved on and in different things. At the end, we have everything in place. So I want you to feel that if you have somebody that will listen to you, talk to them. What can we do? Have strategies in place that are sound strategies that give you the skills and give you the technical assistance that you need to serve these people. You need to have, a language line services that is immediate, that you're having an interpreter within 20 seconds. I have an Arabic interpreter in 20 seconds to help a client that had called at the department. I had interpreters, and we start hiring bilingual personnel. And I would like to recommend the court system to start building your own capacity. And I know you cannot hire every single language of the 132 that you're mentioning, but look at the safe harbors of Title VI. The Latino community obviously is one of the largest. Somali community is one of the largest. Asian community, Chinese at least, is one of the largest. So there are groups of people that exceed the number that you can help, and the court should be looking at. Put a strategy in place. Let's bring in bilingual staff. You have 8 hours a day. Why have an interpreter 1 day, 1 hour, 2 hours? They'll take 30 minutes to get here. That's undue delay in providing services to individuals that are here. I've seen people started here, getting in at 8 o'clock and 4:30, and they have not been served because the interpreter have not gotten in. True? So that's an undue delay according to the law. So learn about the law so that you can educate maybe in a good manner your supervisors, everybody can listen, and maybe that you start a movement. Let's do something, and let's revolutionize. Let's have a revolution where we can. But that's how I started, and I wasn't the deputy director or anything. I was on there, but I have people that listened. So that's why I encourage you, because language is the most important barrier, the most difficult barrier that immigrants have when facing, systems like yours, like the medical profession. Why do you think that hospitals today have interpreters? Because AACS, because Somali women and children, because Jewish Family Service, we came together and we brought anecdotal information about children being asked to interpret for patients. We brought the Civil Rights Office of Health and Human Services to Columbus. They investigated, they talked to patients, and they opened cases. So that's how Central Ohio is about the only place in Ohio that has standards, and hospitals are doing what they're supposed to do. So maybe we could start a revolution. And if you want to start one, call me. I'll be happy to help you.
Say revolution. All right. Thank you so much to our panelists. Now, opportunity for our audience. Is there anyone who their questions were not answered, or some question that you might have? Please come on up. And as a matter of fact, if you wish to just form a line also, that would be great. And we'll take some time to get some of these questions answered. And if we could be, straight and to the point, we'll get this done. So appreciate you. Come on up, and you can speak loudly, but also so they can.
Okay, so I am just mainly wondering how, if I'm talking to someone who I don't really know and I'm having maybe a difficult time identifying them, or I don't want to falsely identify them for someone that they aren't, how do I ask them who they identify as or what they are in like a proper manner that won't offend them? So.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is my mic still working? Okay, all right. Yeah, so I would say, versus saying what are you, it would be better to just say where are you from, or which language, what's your mother language, or something like that. I don't put too much weight on how the question, like the actual words that you use, but really kind of going back to the body language, just how it's asked, with just a genuine spirit of curiosity, and just say, where are you from? If you tell me where you're from, it can help me help you. And following it up with the reason why will probably make it a less pressure situation for the person you're asking.
And if anybody had something to add to that or not.
One thing that will always work, actually two things. If you smile.
We know you.
And then you say welcome. Then you have the key. That person will, whatever prejudice or issues or tension that was going on in his head or her head, is when you have those two things to begin with, I think the rest will be easier. You can have that conversation about where the individual from. One thing that Ian maybe want to talk about is the things that related to gender identity of the individual may be more little complex, but as far as the ethnicity and nationality, it's really easier. It's customer service 101, smiling and asking the person to be welcome to the office. That would be it.
I would say both are fantastic. The only addition that I would kind of include is especially a lot of people in the LGBT community are going to know, especially when we're talking about trans people, is that we understand that paperwork is kind of sticky. And so what you can say is be upfront about it. Say, hey, this might be a little uncomfortable, and I'm sorry that I have to ask, this question, whether it's name or gender, but I just want to make sure I get it right in the paperwork so that we can get you moving along quicker and you don't have any delays in your, individual case. If you're framing it that way and you're like, hey, I'm really sorry that we have to use your legal name and, the gender that is kind of legally in the system for you, but we're just going to have this on the paperwork so that we can get you processed through here, and then I'll make sure that whenever you're here in my office that I'm respecting your identity. Just be upfront with it. We're very understanding. We run into these issues literally daily, so just kind of be upfront and we'll know.
Great. Thank you. And here, next question.
Hi, my name's Ashley. As a person of color and a member of the LGBT community, I constantly find myself educating people about myself, about the communities I belong to. A piece of advice that I always like to give is when a person of color or somebody in the LGBT community is talking, listen, don't interrupt. They're trying to tell you something, they're trying to educate you on something. What advice would you give to an ally to your community in order for them to help you educate others?
Anybody else want to jump on?
Yeah, anyone else?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to add maybe, and that's a great suggestion, with Latinos, unfortunately, you have to have a little bit more patience, because when you ask why they're there and how can they help you, we're thinking, in U.S. American, we're thinking, okay, when did the incident happen, right? The actual incident. They'll go back time. It could be 2 years, 3 years, could be, 5 years ago. So you have to walk them through the present. And as long as I have been acculturated in this country, I find myself telling my doctor things that happened 3-5 years ago, and he listens like, he'll get there. But we tend to do that. because we're storytellers.
Thank you.
One thing that I'm going to add really quick to this is that I know that the people in this room are really just a snapshot of the number of people who work in this building and who do kind of are in the social services in the court system. And just kind of be aware that as an ally, it really is, you can make such a huge impact by, if you hear someone say, maybe ask an inappropriate question or say something that you're like, I think that was maybe a little bit mean or dehumanizing, and maybe that's not the language that someone should be using. Even if it's just, coworkers having a conversation and they use, a slang term that's considered to be a slur, or are kind of making fun of someone for being LGBT, or, having a thick accent, something like that. That is a fantastic opportunity for you as an ally to step in and be like, hey, I'm not a part of this community, but even I'm offended when you're saying that. You shouldn't be talking about people that way. You realize that this is an actual person you're talking about. And I think sometimes it takes people aback when they, a friend especially is the one to kind of step in and correct them. So use your kind of platform as an ally to help out those community members who maybe don't have a voice in that moment.
And a lot of us are now doing a lot of outreach work and, really trying to collaborate more, among each organizations. For Asian American, there are first of all, there are so many different countries, so many different cultures. And then in addition, trying to have any Asian American to come out and willing to say, okay, mom and dad, this is what I'm facing. The challenge is even harder. And so it takes more of us to, to trying to do the outreach. So we're trying to work more, putting a lot of effort. So on weekends, we go into all different communities, going to school, and then trying to do work. So they know what Asian Americans are dealing with. So for you folks willing to come out to learn about what Asian American populations, AAPI is like, and and then also in addition to that particular group that have not been addressed, I think the fact that you show the interest already giving us a lot of support. And but you will see a lot of us on our website will have all those events throughout. Really, we plan a whole year long, and we're trying to work with all different agencies to together pull events. And we will love to have your presence there, but by you being there, that's enough support for all of us.
Hi, my name is Janelle. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that Julia said was that we needed to start a revolution, and that really resonated with me because I see there's a strong sense of community in the Latina organization, the Somali. I see this every day, just dealing with people here and outside of the workplace as well, the Asian. But one of the things that I don't see all the time is a strong sense of community within the African American organization. And I guess my question is how do you do that? How do you start that? What motivated you other than, you yourself being in a situation to want to do something outstanding like that?
For me, the lighting bulb was the fact that somehow I am grateful that when I came to the United States, I had people that walk with me in my journey. And when I was, when the influx of Mexican workers, which are the most exploited of our group, as they started coming, to me, it was a sense of consciousness, my own self-consciousness that I had to do something. And then I started talking to other people, and that's how I found other women that were in the same place. And that's why we came together, because to me, it's a sense of duty, maybe, but I need to pave their way. I have walked first, but I want to make their journey easier. And that's why I do it. And that's why we do it at the coalition. We have 2 of our staff there. But these are people, they don't make huge amounts of money, but they love the community. And they know the struggles that we have. So that's what binds us too.
And that's pretty much like any other community, including the Asians. We have a large influx of refugees coming from Bhutanese Nepali refugees. And And if you see their community centers creating businesses, opening new restaurants, grocery stores, because you need that ethnic food. The Somalis you mentioned tend to bond together. One of the things that I used to hear was, how do they do it? They have nice cars, and how do they open the business? These newcomers who just started arriving a few years ago, all of a sudden have gigantic malls. Matter of fact, the Chuckstins on Westerfield Road were just purchased by a group of Somalis. It's a huge building. The key is pooling the money together, that having a level of trust between the communities. It's a survival in essence, coming a long way from refugee camps and experience that thirsty for success. Matter of fact, I see some of those with the African American communities as well, with going different churches while I do the community engagement work. You see a passion. I was at AME Church yesterday unveiling the U.S. Postal commemoration of the founder of the church. And that passionate song and that having that sense of identity, because it was historically an African American church. So you have very strong faith-based African American communities that are really well connected. As far as the businesses, new business startups, you see the new Americans, including the Somalis and the Asians, tend to be more aggressive and tend to have more numbers relatively when you compare with the other mainstream community. But and it also comes back to the leadership, including the faith leaders. That's the key. With the Somali community, the mosques and the faith leaders play a very important role in their way of life.
I think that cultural competency, because every community all had that special culture, and that sets for the AAPI, for the Somali, for the Latino, and for African American, and then the male and the female, because the woman bound in a different way than male would. And AAC as it started 40 years ago was a group of 4 OSU professors got together and started doing Bible study. From there, they identified saying, there are issues and whatnot, so they want to bring services to, to the community. But it just started out again, going back saying, it takes a whole community to raise either, family or, kids or whatnot. But I think in going back again, like you mentioned about starting that revolution, it just the group of you get together, identify your own culture, share with us. Like, for instance, we often talk about in the homeless shelter. We always say, oh, okay, we're just, we got the victims, let's just put them in, wherever, shelter that you could find. Well, okay, it's easy to say and done. But then what do you know that they need? Like, for instance, comfort food. When you talk about comfort food, what you think about comfort food, then what, most of people would think about, giving them a cold cut sandwich, that's right? Some of us, I want a gumbo, I want that, hot spicy, generals or chicken or whatnot, And so really, how do we identify those are just, issues? And again, it's a group of us got together and say, let's do this. Let's put together and then work here, work there, and then gradually. And then, like they say, the passion and the compassion. The fact that you even think about saying, why want to make a difference? I want to start that revolution right there. That's where all of us start. And that's, so like, Julio said, that's the journey. And then we will all walk together, in that journey. I remember that the movie, How to Make America Cool, seeing that the first time, it really did not hit me. But gradually I realized really, all of us have a different story to share. And all that story says a lot. And then by there, we learn about each other and then respect each other and we grow together. And that's how really Central, Ohio, especially Columbus, has become a very welcoming area for all of us to be.
Well, I tell you what, if you're not fired up after this conversation, I keep hearing a revolution and coming together and making things happen. This is a great conversation. I wish we could continue this. We could go probably, I'm sure, another hour or so. But I would like to bring up for the last question, though, the person who made the phone calls and put this together and got this great panel together and everyone here. And she has a question. So we'd like to bring up Ms. Yolanda Jones and give her a round of applause for all the things that she has done.
Thank you, Napoleon. Well, the whole theme of this is moving beyond our differences, embracing our similarities. That's the flyer that I put out and emailed all across the court. And the one main question that I received from people was, and this goes to you, Lime, is what was the Q in LGBTQ? And the reason I put it on there is the church around here on Mount Street had it on there one time, and I'm just like, okay, we've got to find out what it is. And that's the question that people have asked me that I haven't been able to answer, not being from the community itself. But if you would educate us on that. And before you do that, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming out. Remember this theme and take it back to your floors and your coworkers. Thanks to everyone that contributed. We are having a soul food buffet following. We're having the soul food buffet just to provide food for the training and to say thank you, and because it's Black History Month, that some of the clerks, we chose to cook. We had people from CPD, the probation department, and a number of other people contribute, and I'd just like to say thank you in coming together to put this on. And it is something we need to continue. And I'm going to let you answer it, and then I'm going to ask Napoleon or clerk to come back up and close us out, and I'm going over there. But thank all of you guys. I know you're tired of hearing from me, but I will bug you again. Thank you.
So quickly, I'll go over, when we're talking about LGBT, we're talking about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. We often kind of joke that there's an alphabet soup because in reality, the letters that encompass are more like LGBTQ, IIAAP, P, D. So there are a lot of them, and you don't have to know all of these terms. I'm learning them. I've been working in the community over 10 years, and youth today are coming up with new ways to describe themselves, and these terms are really just a way for us to find community. It's not a way to kind of like label people and easily categorize them. But when we're talking about the Q part of the community, oftentimes it gets left off, but kind of recently we're seeing it pop onto everything. And it really is a two-part. So the first part of it is for questioning. And this is for anyone who maybe thinks that they might identify somewhere in the LGBT spectrum. So they're not 100% sure, but they think that they might. So we have that questioning category there. Oftentimes people will delay thinking about their sexual orientation or gender identity if they're living in a household that is unsupportive, or they know that coming out to their parents isn't going to turn out the way they want it to. So often people will delay until they can move out into a safer place before they will come out, which is why we have that questioning category, so you don't have to assign that label if you really are unsure about putting that label on. The other part of the Q is for queer. Now, this is a term that for a lot of people in the audience, it may kind of trigger like a totally negative connotation with it, and that is absolutely true. I go out and do cultural competencies on the LGBT community all the time, and usually afterwards, if there's someone in the audience who is over around 40 typically, they'll be like, that word was thrown at me every day while I was in elementary school. I'm never going to be able to use this word, like, why do you include it? And queer we're really seeing as kind of a reclaimed word in a lot of the same way that other words have been reclaimed. So the group that has been targeted as being identified as queer has been like, you know what, if you're gonna call me that, I might as well call myself that, and I'm gonna use it to empower myself. We really see that it's kind of generationally, where under about 30, maybe 40, sometimes use the word queer, and especially under around like 25, queer is becoming just a great umbrella term for the community. Instead of saying like the gay community or the LGBT community, we use queer as kind of a catch-all. The thing that I would say is to never ever use it to assign onto someone else unless they self-identify that way. So unless someone has told you that they want you to refer to them and their identity as queer, then just don't even use it. It's not necessary. You can say LGBTQ and explain that the Q is for queer, but don't put that label on someone, because even in my friend group, I have friends who heard that very negatively, used as a slur to dehumanize them, and so they really don't identify with it. So that's just kind of a little bit of a lesson on what that means. And language is constantly evolving, so really don't worry if you don't understand it all. It is very confusing.
Thank you so much, and it is. I mean, and if you get a chance and opportunity, even after this, please sit down and have a conversation with all of our guests, because when you take that time to really better understand their travels and their journey, you really become more acquainted with, and it'll help you go much further with communicating with and understanding those persons in our community who come from all over the world. So I would like to thank, though, all of you for being here, but most importantly, the Municipal Court Clerk, Ms. Lori Tyag, for really spearheading this and making this happen, because no place more that we need that to have this understanding of people in our community, and the court systems with police, so on and so on, but to really do this so that the people on the ground here working really have a better understanding. So to close this session up, I would like to bring her up for the final words. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Please join me in thanking again Napoleon Bell and our panelists. Thank you for attending what is the first of what I hope to be many days and trainings for diversity. One of the things that I value is diversity in our staff, and we do talk about it all the time, especially during the hiring process. We want to make sure that that we reflect the community in our office, and we've talked about that quite a bit. So I just want you to keep that in mind, and please talk amongst yourselves and with your other coworkers about what you learned here today. Formulate some questions, and if you would like to speak with our panelists at a later date, let Yolanda know, and I'm sure she can provide contact information for them to you. So thank you again, and hope you enjoy our wonderful meal. Thank you for everyone who contributed to our meal, and thank you to Yolanda.
Okay, and before we disperse, we have a couple of exhibitors and vendors. Each of the